Obsession. Oxford definition. The state of being obsessed with someone or something. She cared for him with a devoting bordering on obsession. An idea or a thought that continually preoccupies or intrudes on a person's mind. Obsession is something that comes across in media several times. It is a very popular subject in media or a motive for a character. It can be the reason the character can commit wrongdoings, a drive for them to strive towards something better, or simply to love. It can be portrayed as something good or as something abusive, mostly leading it up to the viewer's own judgment. Obsession is something that is hard to write because it's such a complicated human emotion. Therefore, when something like obsession gets written, it often gets misinterpreted. Take something like Lolita from Vladimir Nabokov, for example. A book about a man's obsession with a little girl, which is obviously about abuse, gets misinterpreted as a love story and even gets glorified as an aesthetic. In music, obsession has also been rising in popularity. A lot of songs have lyrics about "I can't live without you" or "I'll be watching you." We've historically recognized obsession as an evidence of love, but in real life, it can have harmful consequences for our relationships and the rest of our lives. Obsession is a passion for something or someone paired with insecurity. It is something or someone we just can't let go, and usually hard to recognize in ourselves. This is exactly what I want to talk about today. I'm going to be using 3 different works in which I feel like obsession is well written, and talk about how they implemented it in their characters. I will also be talking about how the interviewers and readers have interpreted it. And does portrayal of obsession in media have an effect on the real world and relationships? Let's find out. Also, thank you so much for 2K. The support motivates me a lot. Thank you so much. Homura, Madoka Magica. In Madoka Magica, Homura has always been depicted as intelligent and cold. Others could say she could be emotionless, being rude to her classmates and telling Madoka strange things. This is of course because of the suffering she's endured in their time loop. She actually used to have a lack of confidence. She would get bullied for being extremely bad at PE, but she would actually get dizzy during exercises because of her heart disease. Eventually, she gets so depressed that she wanders into a witch labyrinth on accident, which leads her to be saved by Madoka. This causes them to start a friendship, also together with Mami. Because Homura is so antisocial, she gets incredibly attached to Madoka. Madoka is the girl who was the first one to show her affection in the new school. She even complimented her name, which she was previously insecure about. She felt inspired by Madoka and her courageousness. However, when things couldn't get better, Madoka's original death happens during the Walpurgisnacht. Homura rightfully cries over the body of Madoka, making her wish the Kyubey to redo her meeting with Madoka, wanting to protect her this time. Homura, trying to save Madoka, goes on for several timelines. Attempting to get stronger, she even steals illegal firearms and learns how to make bombs. But with every traumatizing timeline, she eventually lets go of her old personality and keeps focusing more and more on saving Madoka, no matter how cruel her ways are. At the end, Homura has completed nearly 100 timelines of 46 days, 12 years to be exact, expecting a different result each time. 12 years of repeating the same month trying to save Madoka from dying or making a contract to become a magical girl. Homura felt like she was the only person to truly understand Madoka, but when Madoka finally becomes a god and saves all magical girls during the final timeline, she disappears and leaves Homura in the world without her, only leaving her memories behind. During the movie, Homura is on the verge of becoming a witch and is being experimented on by Kyubey. Homura, however, has a plan and chooses to become a witch to lure Madoka back to her, so that when Madoka is back, she steals her powers, splitting Madoka and her god form, which makes Homura be able to rewrite the universe. She made herself a demon that can live among the normal world with Madoka. Was it okay for her to turn into a demon though? According to Urobuchi and Shinobu, had she not turned into a devil and ascended into the heaven with Madoka, then the incubators would experiment on other subjects and eventually gain their power back. Homura became so obsessed with Madoka that she tried nearly 100 times to save her, to stop her from making a contract and to stop Kyubey, to no avail. She became desperate and so obsessed with Madoka. Some could argue she even fell in love with Madoka in some way, but according to Chiwa Saito and Aoi Yuki, her love is more of a dependence. She depended on the one girl that showed her affection, that became friends with her while she was being bullied, and now is the girl she has to save no matter the sacrifices. Homura could be attracted to Madoka, but it would be an unhealthy attraction, a love that destroys her and keeps her in the loop, almost something even greater than love, making her borderline insane. Some say her obsession with Madoka is selfish, considering she wanted to have her own outcome, no matter what fate had in store. She did not care about the death of her other friends, only Madoka had to survive, even harming Mami if she interfered with her plan. She is okay with the reality where Mami, Sayaka and Kyoko are dead as long as Madoka is okay. The longer she goes on, the more obsessive she becomes. Homura just slowly turns into a bad and flawed person. It doesn't matter to her if she changes herself, lets her other friends die, or even changes the rule of the universe. All she wants is for Madoka to be safe, even if it wasn't what Madoka herself wanted. Homura refers to Madoka as her one and only friend. It's just an unhealthy, selfish obsession and a desire with a girl she had technically only just known for a period of a month and a half. And even though she accepted being the evil to Madoka's good, she clearly still hates herself for it, shown as with the continued presence of her familiars, the Clara dolls, whose only purpose is to mock Homura, even symbolically commit suicide. The only reason she escaped her labyrinth is that she was happy in there. She hated herself so much that her labyrinth, which is meant to torture the witch, is a happy place. She was so lonely and hated herself so much that she clung to the only person that gave her happiness, Madoka. However, in the new world, her lack of creativity shines. Everything that she has supposedly rewritten at the end of the Rebellion movie is pretty much the same as it used to be before. She has the same school and the same friends, and even meets Madoka in the same way. It's the only thing she wants and the only thing she knows, trying to recreate the most ideal time of her life, still clinging onto that original happiness that Madoka gave her. She didn't want anything new. Nothing could have existed outside of her obsession, because it was the only thing she had known for the past 12 years of her life. Griffith, Beserk. Griffith formerly led the Band of the Falcon, being able to end the 100-Year War. During this war, Griffith proceeds to meet Guts and recruits him after fighting him personally. He is exceptionally interested in Guts and eventually becomes close with him. Griffith even gives Guts special treatment, even though he killed some of his men. This could be because he sees himself in Guts. They are both loners in a way. He has always been well-mannered and charming despite his lower-class upbringing. He is able to convince people to join his side through the sense of ambition and can easily tell when someone has an ill intent towards him. This is what makes him so powerful and dangerous, especially as a leader. His ambition becomes apparent when, as a child, his dream became ruling a kingdom. In his earlier years, Griffith's ego was smaller than what it became later, noticing deaths more often, especially one of a 10-year-old falcon who was being trained. He regretted allowing the boy to join his side. The deaths of those fighting for the Band of the Falcon increase, and it has an effect on him. Success is more important, and he becomes apathetic to the deaths of his comrades. However, he still cares, asking Guts, the man who is very close to him, if not the closest to him, at that point if he's a bad person. Griffith is so interested in Guts for several reasons, presumably for the most important reason, and that is that Guts is the only one that makes Griffith forget about his dream. Guts risks his life several times for Griffith, and expresses he does not want to fight for someone else's dream. Griffith had put everything in his power to get to his dream. He had dreamed of getting to that castle ever since he was a child. In the afternoons, with the sunlight blocked out by the towering brothels and pubs, he would gaze up at the sun-coated castle. It was in these streets where Griffith set his mind to acquiring that thing, his power and his castle. Not only that, but he had fate on his side, acquiring the Crimson Beherit from an old fortune teller. After losing so many men in his war, the only thing he could think of was his dream. He felt like he couldn't let his sacrifices go to waste. However, when Griffith realizes Guts, his greatest ally, wants to depart, he hastily fights Guts in a personal duel again. But with Griffith's lack of composure, he lunges at Guts, intending to kill him. He had become so attached to Guts that he had the mentality of, if I can't have him, nobody can. But Griffith loses the fight with Guts, which results in Griffith losing Guts as well. Because he lost the man that was so interesting to him, the man who was closest to him and maybe even obsessed with, considering he gave Guts special treatment he didn't do to anyone else, he became distraught. On impulse, he goes to bed with the princess, which leads to his arrest and his year-long torture. Whilst making love to Charlotte, he could only think of Guts, the man he had lost. In the process of his torture and after his arrest, he loses his Beherit, which only further leads him to despair. Between the torture sessions, Griffith is left lying alone in the dark, forcing him to be alone with his own thoughts. His thoughts are, however, only about Guts and his dream. He had technically lost them both. It was the only thing that kept him alive, making it the only thing he cared about. He became more obsessed. The first thing Griffith does when he gets rescued is try to choke Guts, but he's surprised and stops when Guts hugs him instead, seeing the regret in his eyes. Even after being rescued, he can only think about his dream and how it's almost impossible for him to achieve his dream now. On impulse, he musters up the strength to grab one of their horses and ride off, crashing into a lake. He briefly thinks about a future with Casca before coming to his senses, trying to rip open his neck on a sharp tree root, but it ultimately fails. He realizes he cannot do anything, not even take his own life. However, as his neck bleeds, he finds his own Beherit in the lake, realizing that the fate was on his side after all. His blood touches the Beherit and Griffith activates the eclipse. During the eclipse, it is revealed that Griffith was to become a demon of the godhead ever since he's got his own Beherit. The rest of his crew gets sacrificed while Griffith gets taken to the deepest part of his conscious mind. Here again, his dream comes into play, thinking about his castle and the sacrifices it took for him to get this far. He again realizes Guts, the man he was so fascinated with, was the only one who made him forget his dream, but because Griffith has already lost everything and sacrificed anything, he thought, why stop now? And accepted the demon deal. He was willing to turn into a demon, into Femto, and sacrifice his humanity for a dream, the only thing that kept his mind occupied at that point. When he sees that only Casca and Guts are alive, he does not hesitate to force Casca upon him, while forcing Guts to watch. This could have been a way to punish Guts, to make him jealous and to rub it in. After all, Guts left him in the first place, and now he wanted to show that he had won. Now I actually have not read the manga further than the anime, but I do plan on doing so. But I still wanted to include Griffith in this video because he has such been a well-written character so far. They portray his willingness to do anything for his dream very well, or well, very disturbingly. Killing Stalking. I won't go into too much detail about Killing Stalking and its story itself, mostly the characters. So I'll give a quick summary. Yoon Bum is an isolated orphan who used to live with his abusive uncle. When he is serving in the military, he gets assaulted and saved by someone named Sang-woo. This leads Yoon Bum to get completely obsessed with Sang-woo and begins stalking him and even figuring out a way to get into Sang-woo's home. A strange noise leads Bum to the basement. There, on the floor, is a naked and beaten woman, hog-tied and in a state of disarray. Before Bum can properly process what he's witnessing, Sang-woo returns to the house, brutally knocks him out and kills the unknown woman, and holds Bum hostage. The rest of the story is Sang-woo completely abusing Yoon Bum, breaking his ankles, SAing him and having a power dynamic. However, Sang-woo is just as mentally unwell as Yoon Bum, due to his past. They are extremely unhealthy for each other. During one argument, Bum cuts his own wrists as he bleeds out and loses consciousness. Sang-woo genuinely panics, begging Bum to survive and apologizing for upsetting him. This scene served to show that despite his physique and constant controlling behavior, Sang-woo is just as weak as Bum, just as needy, just as mentally unwell. The story goes on further, but I mostly wanted to talk about the effect this comic/manga had. Killing Stalking clearly was meant to be a psychological horror. However, a lot of people ate it up and called it a dark romance for some reason. They painted Yoon Bum as the soft, innocent boy and Sang-woo as a strong man who took care of Yoon Bum in a dark way. People genuinely thought they were in love. It is sad to see that people turned this into a way to romanticize abuse, and I honestly feel bad for the creator. Imagine spending tons of time in your work, making it disturbing and very clear that it's an unhealthy relationship, only for 14-year-olds to completely misinterpret it. Yoon Bum stayed with Sang-woo despite the abuse because he didn't really have anyone else. In his eyes, Sang-woo was perfect, his favorite person. He had an obsession with him. Some people have interpreted Yoon Bum to have borderline personality disorder due to the fact that Yoon Bum stayed with his favorite person no matter what. No matter how much wrong he did, he would still remain the perfect person in his eyes. It's an unfortunate reality that when brought up in an extremely hostile environment, individuals tend to see terrible treatment as normal, or even as incredibly twisted form of affection. So no, they were not in love with each other. It's sad to see that a lot of young people read this comic back in the Tumblr days, thought that it was normal, and went on to romanticize abuse through this manga. Which leads me to the next topic. The IRL yandere effect. Recently, I've been seeing a trend in some TikToks. Now, I'm all for my femcel TikToks that have jokes about locking your boyfriend in the basement, but some people have been taking it too far. I'm sure you're all familiar with yanderes, another form of obsession written in manga and anime. A very popular form actually. So popular that this guy decided to make a game about it. Let's not. But I felt like they were less realistic to put them in the earlier examples. But recently I've been seeing videos about people calling themselves, quote, IRL yanderes, quote. They post videos and slideshows about talking how they are genuinely obsessed with their crush or lover. They talk about wanting to murder people talking to them, or even hurting themselves. Keep in mind they are usually minors. Instead of making a joke about it, they make it serious. I saw some Discord servers floating around as well, where they discuss stalking their crushes or manipulating the people they loved. One person on TikTok admitted that they went to court for stabbing someone, probably fake, but another said that they wanted to send their lover some of their own hair. These videos are usually accompanied by photos of gore, anime, anime girls killing each other or something. I honestly find it disgusting that these people force this role upon them. I get that mental illnesses can make you have a favorite person or act upon impulse, but please get help instead of plotting to stalk your lover or hurting yourself just because you want to be like your favorite yandere character. Another cause for this could also be early internet use. Like I said, a lot of young people read comics like Killing Stalking or played games like Yandere Simulator. They eventually convinced themselves that it was normal to start acting like their favorite fictional characters, or maybe they even got groomed into it by someone else. I remember when I was young and reading Wattpad, I saw a lot of fanfictions of the reader getting chased by yandere or the reader being a yandere themselves. It's pretty much in every corner of a fandom. Another example is people calling real-life murder cases yandere. One I can think of right now is the case of Yuka Takaoka, who stabbed her lover because she loved him too much. Her quote, "I want to be a tragic heroine. How is it possible for him to look at other women than me? I know killing him is for the best. If I kill him, it will be eternal, and there will be no pain after. I don't need anything other than you." Again, this is a clear sign of mental illness, but the case got popular and Miss Takaoka got romanticized because she was just like a yandere. It is important to know when to separate fiction from reality and when to seek professional help. It is sad to see pieces of media that were written to disturb the consumer actually turn out to get misinterpreted and even inspire some people. Personally, I like jokes where people joke about wanting an insane girl and stuff, but it's gross when people actually start acting like they take it seriously. But most of these people calling themselves IRL yanderes are actually losers and embarrassing themselves, considering they're all afraid to ask for more ketchup at McDonald's. But what do you think? Comment your opinions down below and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you!